So I want you to imagine setting up the absolute perfect, most comfortable home for yourself.
Right, your ultimate sanctuary.
Exactly. You've got the furniture arranged just right. The lighting is flawless. You've curated this perfect little escape from the chaos of the outside world.
Sounds pretty ideal.
It does, right. But then you discover there is an invisible bouncer standing right at your front door.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And this bouncer is actively turning away the ultimate VIP guests, like the exact guests you actually need the most to maintain any real sense of peace in that home.
Which is incredibly frustrating to think about. And that brings us to the core of our deep dive today.
Yeah, it really does.
Because we are pulling from a really fascinating stack of sources today to figure out who or what that bouncer actually is.
Right.
We're looking at a collection of Islamic teachings, sermons, and theological breakdowns that outline the deeply intricate spiritual rules of a household.
And just to be clear up front, as always, our mission in this deep dive is just to impartially report on what these specific sources say.
Exactly. We're not taking sides or endorsing anything, just, unpacking the concepts.
Right. The mission today is to uncover what invites or violently repels these ultimate VIPs, which the texts call the angels of mercy.
Right. And the sources get highly specific about this. I mean, they list everyday items that act as a strict repellent.
Yeah, and we're going to unpack exactly why things like everyday musical instruments are on the absolute strict do not enter list for these angels.
It's a really jarring concept for a modern listener.
It is. But to grasp why a guitar or a drum kit sitting in your living room triggers that invisible bouncer, we have to first establish who these angels are.
Right.
And more importantly, what is actually at stake for you if they get turned away?
So the texts refer to them as the Ramata Fereshta, which means the angels of mercy.
Ramata Fereshta.
Yeah. And they are not merely passive observers in this theology. They are the active bringers of profound peace.
Right. Invisible comfort during hard times.
Exactly. And a very specific concept called Barakah.
Which roughly translates to a divine blessing, right?
Wow.
Or an unexplained abundance in your everyday life.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. But the teachings present a really stark warning about their absence.
This was the part that really stood out to me.
Right, because it's not a situation where the angels leave and your house just reverts to a neutral, quiet, empty space.
Yeah, not at all.
The sources describe it as a literal spiritual vacuum. And the fundamental rule of this framework is that nature abhors a vacuum.
Right, so something else has to rush in.
Exactly. When the angels of mercy depart, that empty space is immediately filled by shaitan, or the devil.
Wow.
And with that presence comes this whole cascade of family strife, endless friction, and a complete drain of peace from the home.
It makes me think of like a spiritual ecosystem.
Oh, how so?
Well, if you block out the sunlight, the angels, you don't just get shade. The mold and the dampness, which is the conflict and shaitan, will naturally just start growing in that dark space.
That is a perfect analogy. The atmosphere of your home is treated as highly volatile in these texts.
It's never just neutral.
Right. It is either actively inviting divine peace or it is passively allowing in disruption and anxiety. There is no middle ground where a house is just a house.
Yeah, it's like tuning a radio. If you drop the clear signal of the angels, you don't just get silence. You get harsh, grating static.
Yes.
And in this framework, that static is shaitan. So the stakes for the psychological and spiritual health of the family are just incredibly high.
Which brings us directly to the core of the teachings.
Right. What acts as the jammer that blocks that clear signal? What shuts the angels out?
So the sources provide an explicit catalog of household items that act as absolute roadblocks.
And right at the top of that list is something pretty surprising.
Yeah. Often the most jarring revelation for a modern listener is its music.
And we aren't just talking about the abstract concept of, listening to a song on your phone.
No.
The sermons explicitly list the physical tools themselves. Things like guitars, harmoniums, and drums.
Right. If they are in the house, the angels stay out.
And what's wild is the sources group these everyday musical instruments in the exact same prohibitive category as vulgar media, obscene TV dramas, and cinema.
They are treated with an identical level of spiritual severity.
Wait, I really want to push back on this on behalf of the listener.
Sure,
because,
yeah.
well, it feels incredibly strict, right? So having a harmonium sitting quietly in the corner of a room, or, I don't know, playing an acoustic guitar to unwind after work,
Right.
that is equated to having outright obscenity playing on a television screen. How does the theology actually justify placing those on the exact same level of severity?
That's the key question. We have to look at the underlying mechanism here to understand why sound and entertainment carry so much weight.
Okay.
The ban isn't just some arbitrary distaste for melodies. Across all these teachings, the core argument is that music and the instruments used to create it distract the human heart from zikr.
Zikr being the constant internal remembrance or mindfulness of God.
Exactly. It comes down to intentionality and how this framework views the human mind. The heart is seen as a vessel with a finite capacity.
So there's only so much room.
Right. The environment you curate dictates your internal spiritual state. Music, because of its captivating emotional pull, is seen as the ultimate hijacker of inner peace.
It's an emotional override.
Exactly. It induces a state of frivolity or heedlessness. When your mind is completely consumed by the rhythm, the beat, or the emotional high of a song?
You forget that divine connection.
Yes. The texts argue that angels of purity simply will not enter an atmosphere dominated by that kind of overwhelming worldly distraction.
So it's basically a sensory bandwidth issue.
That's a good way to phrase it.
Yeah, like the music demands so much of your emotional and auditory bandwidth that there's simply no room left for the subtle, quiet presence of the angels.
Right.
The signal is totally jammed.
That captures the dynamic perfectly. The bandwidth is maxed out on earthly entertainment. But, the sources do acknowledge this human need for engagement.
Right, they aren't completely unreasonable.
No, they don't demand that you sit in a silent, empty room staring at the floor.
Thank goodness.
Right. They actually recommend specific alternatives for auditory and visual engagement that do not jam the signal.
Yeah, the sermons suggest replacing those musical and cinematic distractions with Islamic educational programs, the news, or talk shows.
Yes.
But the detail that really, truly stood out to me was the specific recommendation for educational animal documentaries.
Oh, yeah, that's a fascinating detail.
Right. The source is literally name drop watching National Geographic or programs about the Australian wilderness.
Which, if you think about it, perfectly aligns with the concept of zikr.
How so?
Well, if you watch a documentary about the complexities of the ocean or the jungle, it naturally inspires awe at the creation of the world.
Oh, I see.
That awe directs the mind outward and upward, back toward the creator. It encourages deep reflection.
Which is the exact opposite of the emotional hijacking or the transient, inward-focused frivolity that they associate with a pop song. Okay, so music and certain media saturate our auditory and emotional bandwidth, acting as these primary repellents.
Right.
But the sources don't stop there. There is a broader catalog of everyday blockers that take up other types of bandwidth in the home.
Yeah, the visual and spatial environment is just as critical.
Right.
One of the foundational examples given in the text revolves around a really interesting narrative involving the Prophet Muhammad and the angel Jibril, or
Yeah.
Gabriel.
Oh, right, the story with the puppy.
Yes, so in the story, Jibril promised to visit the Prophet's house but didn't show up.
Which is unusual.
Very. The Prophet was searching around trying to figure out why, only to discover a small puppy hiding under a bed.
And once the puppy was found, Jibril explained that angels do not enter a house that contains a dog.
Right. But we have to offer a very careful distinction here from the sources because it changes the context entirely.
Yeah, it's not just a blanket hatred of animals.
Not at all. Working dogs, guard dogs, dogs used for agriculture or hunting, those are completely permitted because of their utility.
It is specifically the unnecessary indoor pet that blocks the angels.
The nuance is everything here. And alongside unnecessary pets, the sources list statues.
Meaning 3D carved figures of living beings.
Exactly. And displayed portraits or pictures of people and animals hung up on the walls.
But again, the texts clarify that a closed photo album in a drawer or like a small picture on a passport doesn't trigger the bouncer.
Right. It is the active display and the elevation of these images that serves as the barrier.
Okay.
They also note that physical impurity, referred to as najas, or just a general lack of cleanliness, will keep the angels away.
You know, if we look at this from the perspective of our bandwidth analogy,
Yeah.
whether it's a drum set, a beautifully carved statue, an indoor pet you don't actually need for work, or a framed portrait on the wall,
Right.
these are all powerful earthly attachments. We use them to artificially comfort ourselves, to entertain ourselves, or to decorate our ego.
That's very true.
They take up profound amounts of our caretaking and visual focus, which basically prevents the physical space from submitting to a spiritual purpose.
Which brings up a rather uncomfortable reality about the modern home.
Oh, totally.
Because if you walk through a typical house today, it is essentially a minefield of these exact items.
Right.
We are perpetually surrounded by background music, decorative displays, framed photos, and indoor pets.
Yeah.
From the perspective of this theology, the modern living space is almost completely sealed off from these angels of mercy by default.
That's a heavy thought. If you were listening to this and realizing your living room is basically a fortress, keeping the angels out, the obvious question is, well, how to fix it?
Right, how do you stop jamming the signal?
Exactly. And the sources do provide a very specific blueprint for dismantling those roadblocks and creating a spiritual sanctuary.
They really do. The teachings outline a highly structured, active process.
Okay, what's step one?
The very first step is the physical removal of the prohibited items.
That makes sense.
You cannot invite the angels in while the jamming signal is still broadcasting.
Right.
The statues, the displayed pictures, the musical instruments, they have to be removed from the living space.
But simply emptying the room of blockers isn't enough to invite the VIPs back, is it?
No, it's not.
You have to actively change the frequency of the home.
Exactly. The sources give specific daily practices to reclaim that bandwidth.
Right, so what are those practices?
Well, the foundational practice is the utterance of Bismillah.
Meaning in the name of God.
Yes. The teachings detail that vocalizing this phrase when you unlock and enter your front door and when you sit down to eat your meals acts as a literal boundary line.
A boundary line against shaitan.
Right. The theology states that when a person says Bismillah upon entering, Shaitan realizes, I have no place to spend the night here.
Wow.
And when the phrase is spoken before a meal, Shaitan says, I have no food here.
So you are explicitly denying the negative presence any foothold in your daily routine.
Absolutely.
The sources also emphasize maintaining strict physical purity.
Right.
And reciting specific morning and evening prayers, the du'as.
Yes, those are crucial.
But then they introduce what is basically the heavy artillery for clearing the spiritual atmosphere of a house.
Yeah, they do. The recitation of Surah al-Baqarah.
Which is the longest chapter of the Quran.
Exactly. And the teachings state this isn't just a passive blessing you play softly in the background. It has an active repelling effect.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the specific phrasing from the texts is that Shaitan actively flees from a home where Surah al-Baqarah is recited.
Well, if shaitan thrives on heedlessness, on that static and frivolity we talked about earlier, then vocalizing the longest, most comprehensive chapter of the Quran is kind of the ultimate form of zikr.
It absolutely is.
You are forcefully reclaiming the audio and cognitive bandwidth of the house. The static simply cannot coexist with that level of deliberate remembrance, so it is just forced out.
That's a great way to summarize it. By removing the visual and auditory blockers, the music, the statues, and introducing the Bismillah and the Quranic recitation, you completely transition the home.
You move it from a state of distraction back to a state of focus.
Yes. You have officially rolled out the red carpet for the angels of mercy.
Okay, so let's get into the practical reality of this for the listener.
Sure.
Let's say someone follows this blueprint. They remove the acoustic guitar from the den. They say Bismillah at the door. They swap the background pop music for the Australian animal documentaries.
Right, they've done the work.
How do they actually know it's working? Because the sources outline 7 highly tangible signs that the angels have returned, right? And it's not just a vague sense of good vibes.
No, it's very specific. This is where the psychological depth of this theological framework becomes incredibly clear.
Okay.
The texts outline specific emotional shifts. The first sign is an unexplained, deep peace that settles over the household, which is immediately coupled with an internal reluctance to commit sins.
So actions that used to feel effortless, like telling a small lie to get out of trouble or engaging in a petty argument with a spouse,
Right.
those suddenly feel physically heavy and deeply uncomfortable.
Exactly. It's like your spiritual immune system suddenly kicks in and rejects the toxicity.
Oh, I like that.
And that leads directly into the second sign. A newfound active hatred for sin paired with an intense attraction to worship.
Oh.
The sermons describe this shift beautifully. When the angels are present, hearing the call to prayer or reading the Quran no longer feels like a chore.
It doesn't feel like a heavy obligation you have to drag yourself through.
Not at all. It suddenly brings an overwhelming sense of relief to the point where engaging in worship might actually bring tears of peace to your eyes.
Wow. And what's the third sign?
The third sign revolves around the concept of Barakah, or blessings, which we mentioned at the very start.
Right.
But we really have to define Barakah carefully within this context because it goes against our modern instincts.
What?
Well, it does not mean you suddenly win the lottery or that a massive promotion at work drops into your lap.
Right. The sources are highly specific about this.
Yeah.
You might actually have very little food in the pantry or almost zero money in your bank account.
Exactly.
But the sign of the angel's presence is that you feel a profound, unshakable contentment with exactly what is there.
Yes. The crushing panic of scarcity just disappears.
The simple food you do have feels completely satisfying. The usual family friction and anxiety over paying the bills just dissolves.
Which is huge. Contrast that with our modern hustle culture, where even millions of dollars don't buy people a good night's sleep.
True.
Here, true wealth is framed as the complete absence of anxiety.
That is fascinating.
And if you look at the remaining signs outlined in the text,
Which are?
they include sudden, unexplained courage, deep patience, and invisible comfort during times of immense stress or physical danger.
Yeah.
When you look at all of these, a distinct pattern emerges. None of the signs of the angel's presence are about altering your external material reality.
Right. Your bank account didn't change.
No.
The stressful situation at your job didn't magically vanish. The external world remains exactly as chaotic as it was yesterday.
Precisely. The shift is entirely internal.
The angels of mercy don't rearrange the furniture or deposit cash to solve your problem.
No, they fundamentally alter your psychological resilience.
They shift your perspective so radically toward contentment that you can navigate the chaos outside your front door with deep internal peace.
It is a complete inversion of how society typically views blessings.
Yeah, it really is.
We usually demand that the physical world change to make us feel better. This theology argues that curating a pure spiritual environment changes you internally, allowing you to handle the physical world without breaking.
That is incredibly powerful.
It is.
So we've explored a deeply intricate perspective today on how the everyday physical objects we choose to keep in our homes.
Particularly musical instruments, statues, and certain types of media.
Right. How those can dramatically alter the unseen atmosphere of our living spaces.
And we've looked at the underlying mechanisms, too.
Yeah, how these items are believed to hijack our emotional bandwidth, acting as blockers that keep divine peace at bay.
Exactly. And we've walked through the active daily practices required to curate a space that invites those angels of mercy back in.
It serves as a profound reminder of the weight of our environment.
It really demands that you take absolute, uncompromising ownership of what you allow into your sanctuary.
You know, what frequencies you allow to broadcast in your mind.
Exactly.
Well, I want to leave you, the listener, with this thought to mull over as you go about your day.
Yeah.
Even if you are approaching this from a completely secular, non-religious, or purely psychological perspective, I mean, take a hard look around your own home tonight. How much does the constant, relentless background noise of our media, the emotional pull of our entertainment, and the physical objects we use to distract ourselves actually dictate our moods?
That's a great question.
How much does that sensory overload spike our daily anxiety levels or fuel family conflict without us even realizing it?
Right.
Maybe that invisible bouncer at your door isn't turning the peace away. Maybe the noise we actively choose to keep inside is just too loud for the peace to ever knock.